Now I get into talking about results and a little bit of program design. I realize that the relationships are vital and the most important thing to me, but I also understand that the results is what I'm paid to do. So I want to talk a little bit about my strength program here at Indiana. I have three goals when it comes to program design. Number one, I want the program to be safe. Number two, I want the program to be effective. And number three, I want the program to be efficient. When it comes to safety, do no harm in the weight room. Part of the reason that we can do that is because we can train in small groups to give our players more one-on-one attention. You know, an average group size for me is 4 athletes, and I always have myself and an assistant, grad assistant that's in here to help me. Keep the eyes on the players to make sure they're using proper form and technique. Number two, I want the players to be in a program that's effective. And I think when you talk about effectiveness of the program, you have to look at your post-test results and what do they say? Just like Garrett did a great job of showing, you know, some of his in-season strength numbers. You know, I think that is critical in terms of, is your program effective? Effectiveness of the program, I really learned a lot when I was training for 10 years players for the NFL Combine. You know, number one, if the players trust you and they move and they come and train with you for the NFL Combine, you know, they're trusting you for the biggest job interview of their life when they go to Indianapolis and run that 40-yard dash and vertical jump. The agents are paying you good money to get those results. So you have to prove that your program is effective. You know, was the vertical higher? Was the 40-yard dash faster? Proving that the program works. I think it's also critical, and I learned this working on the Bengals strength staff, is that you always let the athletes know where their best effort, you know, whether it's a dumbbell bench or whether it's pull-ups. And I keep that posted in our weight room year round so our players know exactly where they're at and exactly where they're going. Last but not least, I want the program to be efficient. 45 minutes is the average workout, you know, for me with our players here. Pace, tempo, and energy is critical during the workout. You know, just hearing the other three guys speak today, it's just proven that there's more than one way to skin a cat. You know, Mike Kent, one of my mentors, who was a head strength coach for Louisville football, taught me that at a very early age that it all works. You have to do what's comfortable for you. As a college football strength coach at Louisville, our program was Olympic based. And I feel like I worked under one of the best Olympic lifting strength coaches in the country for 4 years. Then I got to work with Chip Morton and Rock Oliver and the Bengals early in my 20s. And I learned kind of a high intensity model that later expanded into a hybrid model. And that's currently what I'm using right now, 20 years later, is a hybrid model. I really believe in that and what we do. I would tell you that coming out of COVID and hearing our first two presenters today that did an excellent job talking about coming out of COVID, I did a lot of research and talked to a lot of coaches about the 1x20 program. So last off season, which I had 6 weeks, June and July, I did the 1x20 program. Had never done that in my life, but had great results from that. And I'm doing it again as we're into our post right now. Every program is different. You know, I think in college basketball, it's very important to understand that what I'm doing here is not a cookie cutter program. I train every athlete, but I don't train every athlete the same. 10 keys to success that I've learned in the weight room, and I'll kind of drill these off quickly. And if you guys have any questions at the end, we can definitely talk about it. Number one, first and foremost, I like to keep it simple, stupid, following the KISS method. Simple doesn't mean easy. Number two, every workout for me starts on the grease board. I tell the athletes what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how it's going to make them a better athlete, and that creates great buy-in within the program. Number three, never sacrifice form for weight. Number four, I start at the hip and work out each day by training movements first and then muscles. If I had a pointy dot, a red pointy dot, and I put it on your hip, that's the focus each and every day in the weight room. And then we expand out from there. We train in the weight room to be explosive on the court by using ground-based movements that train fast twitch muscle fibers, triple joint extension. I start with that doing a lot of med ball throws. And then we get into plyometrics, and then ultimately we get into barbell training. Push, pull, squat, hinge, and carry equally. That's something that I learned from my mentor, Chip Morton, with the Bengals. Really big on training unilateral exercises. Basketball is a single leg sport, so I try to train in a single leg environment. For every double leg exercise, I do a single leg exercise. This past off season, one of the goals that I had is that each one of our players would do 75% of their body weight on a single leg RDL for 5 perfect reps. I've talked about testing and evaluation, really big on that, on the pre and post test evaluation, and then also setting up performance goals with each individual player every off season to hold them accountable. In 2010, we developed a speed system training manual, but I also wanted to develop our strength system at Ignition. So I came up with the 6 P's to performance. And what that is basically, you can see there, number 1 is prehab. Number 2, I call prime. Number 3 is power. Number 4 is primary. Number 5 is what I call plexus. And number 6 is what I would call pump. The sets and the reps can change throughout the 12-month calendar year, but the outline of these 6 P's I try to keep consistent. So number 1, and Garrett did a great job of talking about functional movement, when I get into my prehab program every day, it's knee and core stability, hip mobility, ankle mobility, shoulder mobility, a lot of carries, a lot of movement prep that would probably be considered for most of you guys functional training. Number 2 is something I call prime, which is basically quick foot activity that will stimulate blood flow, elevate heart rate, and it's almost like you're starting the car up and revving the engine, getting the players ready for the training session. Number 3 is, again, the power complex, which is, again, movements first, muscles second. And this is where we get into some velocity-based training that I know has been of, a lot of people talking about that over the last few years. Number 4 is our primary movements each day, which is example would be trap bar squat, hip press, barbell bench, incline bench, and those are all going to be percentage-based progressions. Number 5 is plexus, which is basically supersets of antagonistic muscle groups. On upper body days, it's a push-pull. On lower body days, it could be a quad hamstring, an inner thigh, and outer thigh. Last but not least, the pump is always something that would be similar to like drop sets, sets to failure, Tabata, and I'm also doing a lot of isometric holds over the last couple of years as that final phase there. Our program's daily objectives, and I wrote an article about this for NFL.com a few seasons ago called A Growth Environment. Every day that our players come in, I want to create an atmosphere that is competitive, that is learning, and that is fun. So a competitive atmosphere is me challenging the players to be the best versions of themselves. A learning atmosphere, I just mentioned that every day we're going to train to become a pro, because every one of these basketball players at Indiana, when they come here at 18 years old, they think they're going to be a pro, an NBA star. So I tell them I've got to train you in those habits and teach you how to be a pro. So this isn't like a stage photo. That's me actually going through the grease board, with our players. And when I got to Indiana in 2017, I knew right away we were going to redo the weight room here. But my first request was for this grease board, and I've had it ever since, because I knew that was the most important thing in the weight room. It wasn't the dumbbells, it wasn't the barbells, it was a grease board to teach our athletes. Last but not least, I want a fun atmosphere. I want our players to enjoy the grind. I want to create an environment that is welcoming, but it's also very challenging. I learned that in the private sector. If you don't create that environment, then these these players, these clients, these parents, these agents, they're not going to pay you.